Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From the Mountain, a podcast from the campus of Mount Perrin Christian School. I'm your host, Steve Kyle. With me, Viola Lucier. Hey, Viola.
Hello, glad to be back.
Yeah, it's glad to, it feels like it's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
It has been too long. Even really since with my office where it is and your office where it is. For those that don't know, we work at the same place.
Yes.
I hardly see you, Viola.
I know.
I see your girls more than I see you.
We're busy bees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are, and it's a good busy. But welcome to this episode. And Viola, we have another first-time guest. I always like it. We have some repeat guests, and repeat guests, much like me, I'm sure they can be boring, right?
No.
I'm just kidding. And I apologize to all our repeat guests. They're not, but I've honestly, this guest has been it's been a weeks, maybe months in the making, Tom. I'm not really sure. I think we asked multiple times, and weather and illness and everything. But we have, if you saw the description, we have in the studio with us on today's episode, Tom Gray, Pastor Tom Gray. Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
So glad to have you. And yeah, we had you scheduled to speak in our chapel, to be on the podcast. And then, of course, illness came.
Right.
You had no voice the very first time.
Wow.
And we got the call the night before, hey, can't do it. I think I actually did the chapel that day.
You did.
It was mediocre, no doubt.
No.
It was not what you brought. Then the second time we rescheduled.
Yeah, we did.
Everything was great, and podcast and everything. And then weather,
Snow.
which we're in Atlanta, and
Or the
snow
threat of
or
snow.
ice, whatever it was. I don't know. Someone spilled a cup of chewy ice on Cobb Parkway, and they shut down
Shut it down.
the county. But so we couldn't do it then. So finally,
Here
we're here,
It's the charm.
and it is. And I told Tom earlier, before we went on, that it's obviously God in His divine plan. I have to believe this is
Yes.
now the time that maybe what you're going to share was something different than it was before. So we're gonna believe and trust that, and I'm glad to have you here. But for people who might not know you, Tom, real quick, just give us a few minutes. Who's Tom Gray? And why should we listen? No. But go ahead. For people who don't know, introduce yourself.
Well, and let me start with relationship to Mount Perrin, with this being primarily targeting or for in the service of Mount Perrin families and parents. I have been a Mount Perrin family and parent. Mount Perrin holds a central place in the heart of our family. Each member, me, at the top of that list too. So we've 3 children. Two out of the 3 graduated from Mount Perrin, and between the 3 total, my wife and I, Dana, last night were adding it up. 22 and a half years
Wow.
of
Tuition bills. Come on. You guys talked about that. How much money? Oh, my wife and I have done that.
So we try to block that out.
Yeah.
But 13 years of my wife working
Yeah.
here. So we've had a lot invested. I had the privilege of serving as the 5th and 6th grade football coach for 2 years, and then the 7th and 8th grade football coach for 2 years. So loved every little bit of opportunity to invest in the mission, Mount Perrin, blessed by the people of Mount Perrin. So the mission here, I know Dr. Till used to say his goal was to create a community so compelling you'd never want to leave.
Yeah.
But a community so complete you never want to leave, but a calling so compelling you can't stay.
Yeah.
And I've seen that accurately reflect what we've experienced at Mount Perrin. Not that to overhype it or whatever. It's a real place with real struggles and challenges, and
Sure.
every parent, every family, every student here, is in the fight, is in the battle, and it is a battle. And so this, as a tool for parents to handle the challenges day to day, is significant. So I applaud both of you for doing this, and if I can contribute something, awesome.
Yeah.
You will.
And other background, so I'm the pastor of Mars Hill Community Church. My background, I used to be a college football coach. I've got a BA and an MBA from Vanderbilt University, and I played football there, then went into coaching, and it's when I was coaching at a small D school in Alabama that God called me into ministry. went and
Now,
got,
not many people know Vanderbilt has a football program. I just want to let
They
them
did
know
well
that.
this year.
Well, they
Thank
beat
you.
Alabama. Didn't they beat
we
Alabama?
beat
Yeah.
Alabama.
They did. But
We
well,
beat
some
Georgia
people are
Tech
like,
in the bowl game.
That's all
listen,
that matters.
yes,
There you
yeah,
go.
that is it. I was just kidding anyway.
Yes.
I know
Wait,
everybody knows
what
that
D2
now.
school?
It was at the time called Livingston University. Now it's University of
Yes.
West Alabama.
Yes.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Coached and taught business there for a couple of years.
Nice.
Went to seminary
Okay.
in Memphis, and anyway, I guess that's about it.
Yeah, and now, you've been at Mars Hill for how long? You helped start Mars Hill
I was the
Community Church.
founding pastor. It's been
Yeah.
it's been a path that you could not have predicted ahead of time, but God's hand's been on it. So we started with 11 people in our living room, no founding church or denomination, but we wanted to see if God would be enough to establish a church. Turned out He was, and so I left after 9 years of 11 people up to a few hundred. Was gone 7 years, and then the Lord brought us back, and have been back this summer. It'll be 13 years back, and it's just I just love it.
Yeah.
And, it's a privilege to get
Full disclosure, it is my church also. I do attend, and we did when we first moved here 8 years ago. We visited a lot of churches,
Yeah, you
and
did.
a lot of good churches. And we landed, of course, at Mars Hill, and have been there for almost, or going on, or maybe it is 8 years now. And
when you preach,
awesome.
those are some of our best Sundays.
No, I'm the substitute preacher. You know what I mean?
If we have one of those holidays where we think everybody's going to be gone,
they asked me to do it, and it's
President's
kids throwing, airplanes, and I mean, it's just like everybody. No, it really isn't that. It's always a privilege, but it is, and we landed there because we love a church and a pastor that teaches. Like, and again, I'm not anti-preach or but I wanted a church that had all this. Man, someone who you can tell. And Tom, I didn't bring you on to tell you all that stuff, but that's why we're still there. It's why we invite people. Hey, I'm like, hey, if you want a church for other stuff, but if you want one for the Bible,
right?
Somebody's going to teach and preach it. Come on. No, there are others. I'm only kidding. But and then Tom, you of course recently you have your own, and we'll talk about this. You're also the host of your own podcast,
right,
as well. And we're going to talk about this at the more at the, because I think it's a really important podcast, and so. You're not on for that reason, but I really think it has great value, and maybe people have heard the radio spots, and we'll talk more about it. So you also do this as well, and so but Tom, there are so many things because over your years of being a pastor, I think even when you left for that 7 years, I think you were kind of a men's pastor.
That's right.
During that kind of window, which to me. Again, when I think about, and we've utilized this in the past, talking about biblical manhood, you're the first guy that comes to mind because it isn't. I think it's important to a lot of people, but it's your heart. You see such significant value. Can I just, as we're going to be getting into this, why do you have this? And I still think it's there. Yeah. This really strong kind of calling to reach the hearts and passions of men. To become men of God, to lead. Do you mind?
Oh, and the reason is very simple, and this is not a negative statement on our wives, mothers, and sisters. They basically carry the load. They're the reasons things thrive, stay alive, function. But so not to take the role and the effort of the wives for granted, they're the ones that have the consistent input that keeps everything together. So that being a given, taken for granted. As men go, so goes everything. As men go, so goes the home. As men go, so goes the church. As men go, so goes the society. I mean, it's not even, it's tragic. I mean, the number of people in jail, the percentage weren't raised with a father, a loving, caring, involved father in the home. So men stepping up to the plate and being who God designed them to be, who God will enable them to be, who God's called them to be as leaders and lovers of their wives and their children, nurturers, and protectors, providers, all those things. It's a beautiful picture. And if we can get men to do that, we could clear out the jails. We could, just solve a lot of society's problems without having to pass another law.
Mm-hmm.
We could make education make it a lot easier on all the teachers too. If the dads, showed up and invested in helping raise the kids, moms carry an inordinate high percentage of the load of
everything.
That's
Yeah,
right. That's
they
right.
they do, and it's been my experience oftentimes here. And again, we have amazing dads, but when it comes to that, when we offer anything spiritual, I'll be completely transparent. When we offer things like that, 98% of the people that show up are the moms.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not in any way saying, well, dad's busy or dad's this, and it oftentimes comes to what we prioritize, and we see that they understand that responsibility, they're carrying that, and I think it's I'm with you on that. I think it's a huge to concern, burden. It's definitely a responsibility, and I think it's something that needs the attention not only of our men listeners, and I think we have more women listeners than we do men listeners. But again, I think women listen to podcasts more than men do. I think just by their nature, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But so if you're a man listening, great. I mean, keep listening. Be a great
Good
one.
job.
If you're a mom, make sure you share this with your husband.
Yeah.
Just pass this podcast along to him. No, it's not only for them, certainly not. But let's start because Tom, you've been involved in so many aspects of. You've been you are a community leader. You are you're involved in not just, hey, I preach on a Sunday and I disappear, or you're kind of involved in whether it's leading a Bible study for community, people from all denominations and faiths I know, and various positions are part of that. You bring an interesting perspective. And so being a pastor for, how long you been total a pastor for?
Oh, boy. Over 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you are 30.
I know. Isn't that wild how that happens?
It's crazy. So I kind of want to pose this kind of question to you and get some feedback because I think it's relevant to our listeners. We are a Christian school, and most of our people that listen are parents and people tied to Mount Paran or have some connection to us. But when you consider, and I want to say the Christian home, and if you're not watching this online, you're just listening. I'm making air quotes because that word Christian, I think, can be so misconstrued and oftentimes is misunderstood. What do you see as maybe, and I'm going to frame it in three, maybe we don't get to three of the biggest concerns in the home and the family today, in the Christian home specifically, because as a covenantal Christian school, that would identify at least the majority of our families. But what do you think that those are, that as a church leader, community leader, you're like, hey, these are the things I'm kind of beginning to, I don't want to say it, but engage with. What would your answer to that be?
Well, an initial knee-jerk response, a hot stove, whatever, hot button, front burner issue that's very, common and people talk about it a lot is just the distraction factor. We lived as distracted people. Our relationships suffer because of that, certainly within the home. And we like to run to blame the phone and the devices and the technology, and those are huge deals to deal with. There's a term that sociologists have coined recently that we give each other, that the term is continual partial attention.
Ooh.
So we're like always just kind of half paying attention when our kids are talking to us or we're talking to our spouse or anything. Yeah. We're just completely distracted. And then there's layers of that, and it's not just the phone, but it's the schedules and it's the societal pressure and whatever your chosen avenue, whether it's the arts or athletics, the demands that come and the expectations that almost subconsciously get embedded into us from our culture that, well, this kid's got to excel to a ridiculously high degree. They've got to earn a scholarship. They've got to, whatever these things are.
Does that happen here, Viola?
Just a little.
Yeah.
Well, and so that the distraction factor amps up exponentially just in the busyness, so that we never have time not only to talk deeply, engage deeply, enjoy relationship, build relationship, much less invest in the spiritual, emotional things that really do matter. I think about this just from sports. My wife and I are both big-time sports people. We were raised with sports-crazed dads. My wife was a tennis player at the University of North Carolina. I played football at Vanderbilt. So we kind of know the sports world. We left college when your sport is done all of a sudden, and that's the full identity of who you were up until that point, it's a real identity crisis. All of a sudden you wake up one day and go, well, now who am I that I don't play the sport anymore? But even the people, I think about this, football was my thing, for example, and I'm sure this has a relatively same frame of reference for any sport. And even, I think, music skills, too. I'm reading this great book called Strength to Strength, and they talk about how just any of these things that are primarily physical or coordination or certain mental skills, you really hit your peak kind of late 20s, early 30s. And so they were talking about, in fact, the author of the book was a concert instrument, I forget which instrument, maybe French horn or something, but a concert level, I mean, as high a level as you could. And he said by the time he hit early 30s, the answer to keep his skills, much less try to continue to improve his skills, the answer had always been, well, practice more. And he kind of found, well, I practice more and I'm still getting worse. And that's just kind of the reality for everybody. So what you have here is this reality. Even if you could get your kid, let's say, for example, back to football, to earn a football scholarship, play in the pros for 10 years. I think the average NFL career is about 3.5. It makes it that far.
Wow.
But if you played 10, you're still done at age 32.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that's been the grand success outcome of our parenting. Oh, we've shortchanged our kids pretty dramatically. And they got a lot of living to do after age 32. But so everybody's playing days are done pretty early.
Yeah.
And so this whole, we're slaves to the busyness. It builds in distraction. It just, in a lot of ways, rips the most essential fabric of the real life value components. It rips it out from under us without us even knowing it while we're just continuing to run on the treadmill. So all that to say, I would say distractedness.
Okay. And you're talking about within the home too.
That's right.
You know, we're not talking about, hey, I'm distracted with my coworkers, and we're talking about, if you're listening, I mean, the reference here is within the home, and this is moms, dads, and our children. So when we talk about the impact of relationships, we're talking about between spouse, between our children.
Right.
I just want to make sure we get back to, we're going, yeah, but it's only my coworker, or it's somebody we're talking about the family unit, the most significant relationship. And I just want to make sure I drew the attention back to the fact we're talking about the home, this distractedness within our own family unit.
Yes. And, but here's my real, I would like to drive through the distractedness to the heart. Because distractedness mostly is a symptom. The real issue is, parents, is to settle, what is your purpose?
Yeah.
So, because only when we're really clear on that and living consistent or aligned with what we'd say we'd like it to be, and as Christian people, what we might be able to answer in a Christian pop quiz, what it should be, maybe coming out of our catechism class or whatever, we kind of know the answer. The answer is, the purpose of my life is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. But what is it really?
Yeah.
That's the issue for Christian parents. And I loved your air quotes on the, because there's a difference, between being Christian school parents and being Christian parents.
Yeah.
And to the extent that there's that gap, that's the root of the problem.
Yeah.
And so I heard this analogy, it's not to me, and it's a little graphic, dramatic, but I'll go with it for a second. So there's a dad who gets the news that his 3-year-old child has terminal cancer. Wrecked by this. Hits his knees in tears, crying out to God, God, please heal my child, heal my child. As it turns out, an angel taps him on the shoulder. Says, God sent me to you to tell you He will heal your child on one condition. You write out on this piece of paper your life purpose statement. Tell the truth, He will heal your child.
Ooh.
If you tell the truth, He won't. It's a little weird of a little, but let's go there. What if every parent at Mount Perrin Christian School came to that place of soul opening honesty? Say, am I actually living? What is my day-to-day, are my day-to-day commitments? What are my day-to-day activities? What do they actually own as my life purpose? How am I living? What life purpose am I living demonstrate is my actual life purpose
Yeah.
statement.
Evidence, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's where we need to deal with this, because what God did when he gave you kids is he gave you somebody who's an infinitely skilled hypocrite detector.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
true.
Yeah, they are.
And so they know what your life purpose is. You could slide that piece of paper over to your kids and they'll tell you what the life purpose of mom is, the life purpose of dad is. Mom's life purpose is to have children that excel and rank highly in the test scores or performances, or get the first vocalist opportunity. That's mom's life purpose. Or dad's life purpose is to make money and to gain fame and to have children who will make a lot of money. That's dad. Or dad's purpose is to have, highly successful athlete children. The kids know.
Yeah.
But the best thing a parent can do is that, because everything else, like a commitment to not being distracted in the home and what we do with our phones or what we do with our church attendance, all of those are kind of byproducts of getting the first question, the foundational question, answered correctly.
Yeah. And that's certainly, as you hear that and think, man, what is my purpose? And how would I, when you asked that question, I said, man, how would, and obviously the way my kids would answer that now, I mean, even with my job, my career being full-time Christian education and service, has my life purpose always been God? It is to glorify you. It is to honor, it is to do, or has it been, man, I really wanted to make a name for myself in here. Yeah, I want the #1 podcast. Move over, Joe Rogan, from the Mount. I don't even know if he's the #1. I have no idea. But that's so yeah. I think #1, if you're listening right now, Viola, I don't know if you thought,
Man,
golly, I don't want to.
This is convicting.
I don't want that. But what would my life, purpose actually be? What do my actions identify it? And like you said, the hypocrite part of kids, you could say, kids, what's really important is, but they're like, but mom and dad, your life certainly doesn't reflect that in the way that you do and live. So this idea of distractedness, or really identifying purpose, which I think can speak to a lot of things. So kind of an issue or concern, and I think a big one in what to do. Number two, would there be another, if you had, and again, these are in no particular order and not the only 3 things or concerns. So I don't want it to be, boy, someone else might listen and think, oh, he missed one. Oh, he missed, this isn't.
Yeah, I don't know. My next couple, I mean, I think I've been processing this, praying through, the people we engage with in my role as a pastor, a fresh empty nester myself. I think we feel the weight of the threats of the world and its influences, Satan and his influences, the world's systems, the world philosophies. It seems, and I don't know how to quantify this and compare it across decades or generations, but it sure seems like, the things that kids are tempted by or tempted with or presented, all these divergent ideas and philosophies that obviously are contrary to the biblical things and God's design and all these things, but boy, oh boy, it's the onslaught is relentless. So I think that's a big one. How do you navigate the gauntlet of garbage philosophically that just is the water our kids are swimming in as they grow up in our current zeitgeist, our culture these days? That's a big one.
Where do you lean towards in terms of that? So I would say there's 2 ways that people could go about this. One, you could cut out all the garbage, right? And then 2, you can allow the garbage to be there, but then kind of help your child to navigate the garbage. What would you say, like, if I am a parent of a lower school kid, what should I be doing?
That's great, Viola. And I think it will in part depend on the kid as well. There's that personalized, you got to know your kid and what they're ready and when they're ready to handle what. Typically when they're younger, there's a lot of protecting. We've got to know them in terms not only their own unique personalities, but the developmental stages and phases. What are they ready to process through analytically? Where are they in terms of an understanding of God, that they belong to a bigger story, that they're created for a higher calling and purpose, and that God is real? Where are they in that whole thing? Now we can probably after lower school, is when you get into a lot of these things. So until they're ready, I think we do protect them. It can be deadly dangerous for them to be exposed to things they're not ready to frame up, or they're not ready to even receive and process in a way that we can help them frame up a correct handling of it. So yeah, there's a big time put the fences up and guard, what they're exposed to, especially young, and to the extent that then we can wisely help them navigate when they are exposed to what, in the context like what you said, I think is exactly right, where we do, at some point, I mean, it's foolish to think I'm going to protect them all the way until adulthood or something, or I'm going to somehow be able to shield them from all of this. That's sticking our head in the sand and thinking somehow we can keep it from them is really a bad approach. So, but when they're ready, as they can maybe handle a little more of it, we go with them through it and discuss it, but it goes back to the whole thing too, not just the life purpose, but one of the greatest things about becoming a parent, how we will grow because we're parents.
Yeah,
and I want to, if we could do something like take any anxiety or shame off of parents. Let's say, parents, please don't feel ashamed if there's a thing going on in you, that when as you're now trying to be a parent, you're all of a sudden for yourself things that you go, I should know this already, or I should have my convictions figured out. Because as you help your kids process all this onslaught that's coming from the world, you've got to not only be able to help them see clearly what's what. You got to be able to handle the what questions. But if you're going to do this well, you've got to help them see how do we handle this? How do we navigate conversations at school, or how do we navigate temptations that come up? How do we navigate whatever the different sources of lies that come at us? But you also, and this is the big one, you also have to be able to articulate why. Like even when we get to some of these questions, like, well, what about church going? I think one of the biggest answers about church going is we got to be able to tell our kids not just we go to church in a committed kind of a way, but you better be really expert on why. These kids need us. This is part of critical. Shepherd. Why not just go because we go, not go because I know you hate it, but we're going. No. There's so much more that's the reason behind it. But part of what this will expose as we process this in our role as parents, it will expose I don't even know myself.
Yeah.
I'm not really clear on, as I'm now needing to carry the responsibility of articulating it to these children as they develop. I'm having to figure it out for myself. That's okay. Don't feel bad about that. Don't feel like, shame on me, I'm a terrible parent. No. Just say, thank you, Lord, for the gift of now being responsible to be a parent, and let's get after it. Let's figure this out.
Yeah.
So you got a part of this whole thing. What's your life purpose? Well, then why? Why all of a sudden is commitment going to be your commitment? Well, if your answer is, well, that's probably the thing I should do, you haven't discovered the why yet. So I'm not trying to say that to shame anybody, but let's go, get on board. There's great reasons why. For you to be able to pass that on, you've got to first own it yourself too. Yeah. But that's the truth in all these cases of whatever the things are. Why don't we process drinking alcohol the way we do from a biblical frame of reference? What about pornography? We were talk about this. What about, dating in high school, or all the factors, the physical temptations, or just the whole gamut? Or what about, are there really 48 genders? Or whatever the things are, however many there used to be on Facebook.
It's at least
there
48.
Really?
Oh, cheese and crackers.
At least, yeah.
But anyway, so I don't know. I think some of it is we got to absolutely go. We got to let them be exposed to it at the right time in the right way with them, but we've got to be ready to talk through what, how, and why.
That's right. That's right. Because if we're not, there is a world that is giving them lots of answers to those questions that sound great, that are misleading, that are, especially if we're not ready to step in.
So, okay, my question. Both of you have been in ministry for a long time. What is the role that the church plays within influencing the family? So, and I ask this because I remember when I was little, I was in the car waiting to go to church. And I feel like now everyone just sees church sometimes as just this extra thing I have to do. And I'm like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
So how do you see that? Because back in the day, you would kind of like somebody who kind of mentored you would tell you like, oh yes, well, when they say things like this, or, that happens so-and-so, and, here's how you should kind of handle it. And I feel like we're isolated. We're so isolated now.
Well, and the isolated and the distraction, those things are to the same ultimate problem. And you're right, this isolation is awful. And as parents, the correct understanding in terms of the relationship to the church, and I would say in terms of relationship to the Christian school that you send your kids to, is to recognize that these are a part of a broader community of help and assistance, critical parts, but it's not on them. The ultimate responsibility is on the home.
That's right.
And the church helps, the church supports, supplements, the school helps. But I know it's a common thing, and if we can help one parent kind of switch on this, that'd be great. Because it's a common thing to go, that's their job at the Christian school. They teach them about Jesus.
Yeah.
No, it's my job at home. But the church, to your point too, I think maybe, Viola, we need churches to take their role of coaching, discipling, encouraging, supporting moms, dads, children, families very seriously in their structure and the relationships they emphasize, in the programs even the style of programs. We want it to be winsome, and we're not going to make it a playground all day, every day either. But at the same time, take the job very seriously. And I think it's not a crutch, but it's a necessary support. And it's a superpower undiscovered in many cases, or unutilized by many families, is the role of the church.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I want to encourage people to go to church mindset of I'm here to serve others, not just to get something out of it. But you're going to get a whole lot out of it. And it's a whole lot you need, actually. One of the great things, and both of you have had great roles in our kids' lives, but when we first had kids, we were on our knees praying that specific thing. Lord, please send other mentor figures, coaches, teachers, influences, and that's what God does in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, in the blessing of a Christian school, you need that as much as the responsibility is on the nuclear family, the mom and the dad.
That's right.
The mom and the dad all by themselves are kind of like fighting with one arm tied behind your back. And you need the rest of the body of Christ engaged in helping you.
That's good. That's good. And so you bring up the church, and that's, Tom and I have talked about this. I have two major things. I wanted to talk about some of these concerns, which you've addressed, and it's been great. And not only have you addressed them, I think you've given our parents something to really think about, a place for them to go, man, I really, some things I need to begin to process. This idea of the church, that's another, taking that, because I think there's a great church discussion that's relevant to Mount Paran Christian School that I definitely want to have. And so, Tom, this is my invite to you to say we're going to bring you back on this episode, or another episode for, I want to focus on the church.
So I can be one of those boring repeat guests?
Yes, so you can be one of those. No, I wouldn't even invite you. I'd have said, that's great, Tom. What a great episode, and maybe we'll cross paths one day. No, not at all. I really think, because there's some insight I think you could provide that would be great. And honestly, we could go down the church road, because there's a significant discussion I think that has to be had that has direct application. You touched on it already, to us and in our role, not only as Christian school, but more importantly as parents and our responsibilities and engaging in that. And so we're going to have you back on to talk about that. I did want to mention, if people want more information, now I know you host a podcast and started a number of years ago, spots on the radio, This Stuff Matters.
Yes.
And so it's a weekly I think you told me you're taking a break, but it's a weekly, monthly podcast. How often does the episodes?
Yeah, we've run them weekly at different seasons for different stretches of time, and we've taken a break for a couple of months. We just don't want to put episodes out that are just talking for talking's sake kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So we've got a great library of episodes we're putting together right now. We're going to release soon. We're going to focus in 2025 on men, kind of back to our original question.
Yeah.
Helping men step up in the ways that God wants them to, owning that. Yeah, I think that's an even a more dramatically felt need in the world these days, especially among the younger men. It's lacking.
Absolutely,
it
is.
We want to try to help with that.
Good, and so they can find those. I think on Apple, they can find them on all the This Stuff Matters podcast.
If you look for This Stuff Matters, the podcast, you can find it.
And it's on all the streaming platforms. You can hear more of the great guests that they've had on. I've listened to a number of episodes, and Tom. First of all, thank you for being on today. We'll definitely have you back on. So I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
My blessing. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I want to thank everyone out there. Viola, thank you again, of course, as always. And thank you for listening to another episode of From the Mount.